right, you guys, as you can see by the thumbnail, this is episode 100 of Inner Demons. And without further ado, I'm going to get straight to it. So check it out, you guys. Episode 99. I think I just finished telling you guys about the first and only time that I smoked spice. One of the homies that was up there with me had some spice. Me thinking that this was some kitchen spice, something that you would find in your cabinet, in your kitchen, or thinking that it was like weed, according to the homeboy. So I decided to try it. And again, this stuff is nothing to play with. I believe I told you guys at one point in time, I even read something up on spice. People have actually died smoking that stuff. I don't know what it is. It's some kind of man-made chemical type of stuff. Put it like this. I felt paranoia on another level that I had never felt before in my life. And needless to say, that right there is the reason why I will never touch that shit again. Anyways, I know I'm kind of skipping over a lot of stuff that happened in 6A. There's nothing that's really relevant. A lot of stuff that happened up there was just, the daily things that happened during the course of when you're in the county jail. There's nothing really noteworthy that I can talk about that really happened. So anyways, I'm going to get to something that, I've been waiting to talk about. And those of you that have been following Inner Demons, I know this is something that a lot of you have been waiting for as well. And that's sentencing. Everything that happened on the day of sentencing and everything that happened after that. Because there's a lot more to this story in Inner Demons than just what happened in the county jail and everything that happened as far as my career and everything that I went through. There's the experiences that I had after I got out, how I was able to adapt and just how everything was for me after I would get back out. Things were obviously different. I had lost a lot of people and life was going to be different for me. So that's basically what I'm going to be talking about in these upcoming episodes. So like I said, sentencing. This is something that it's been 10 years in the making, sentencing. And you guys got to understand, I went from extreme highs to extreme lows, back to extreme highs, back to extreme lows. There was a point in time during this process that I was at peace with spending my life in prison. I had pretty much told myself that I was going to be spending the rest of my life in prison and that I would never see the streets again. I had pretty much allowed myself to believe that I was never again going to be a part of that life out there in the free world. Life as I knew it. All the things that we enjoy out here, all the luxuries and privileges, I never thought I was going to be a part of this ever again. I thought my life was going to consist of concrete walls, steel, bars, prison, and just that lifestyle on the inside. So coming to terms with that and then going to another point in time where I believe that there might have been some light, it was kind of a shock to me. It was something that I don't know, it was pushing and pulling me in different ways that I can't tell you guys. I can't explain it. But it definitely tested me as far as my mental strength. That's a hard pill to swallow. Coming to terms with the fact that you're never going to see the streets again. And then, like I said, later on, there's a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel. And then things started to get better. And then, again, I went from a possibility back to I'm going to spend the rest of my life in prison. I'm done. I took these losses. This is the best course of action insofar as where my mind was at that time. And just because I was still wanting to be a part of that lifestyle. So you guys got to remember this. So when I went from Little Max, when I was in Little Max at one point in time, that's probably around the time when I thought that there might be some hope to possibly maybe get out one day. Maybe it was going to be 10, 15 more years down the line, but that, at least I thought there was a chance. Then Dancing Bear came into the picture and everything got shook back up. And at one point I got back on track and then I went back to an active tier. And from that point on, then I took those losses. If you guys remember, going back in my story. And then from that point on, I went from that little flicker of light at the end of the tunnel to I'm going to spend the rest of my life in prison. And the reason for that is because here I was trying to hold on to my beliefs. Here I was still trying to be loyal to something that I truly believed in. But if I was going to continue to push that line, life in prison came with it. And there was no way around that. But anyways, at this point, when I'm in 6A, all that had obviously changed. You guys know what happened from Little Max to South Max to Second East to the observation cells. So now here I am for the second time believing that there's light again at the end of the tunnel. I knew I was going to be getting back out at some point, but I just didn't think I was going to walk out of the county jail. I thought I was going to have to bring at least another 5, 10 years, whether it was in the feds or in state prison. I just thought that they were going to make me do more time. I'd already been down 10 years, but I thought they were going to at least try to get another 5 or 10 out of me, because the way I was looking at it was like this. These people obviously knew about my history. They knew all the mischief I had been involved in as far as the NF, as far as prison, as far as just being involved in the criminal element. And, on one front, it worked in my favor, but on another front, it worked against me. Because whether it was the judge, whether it was the district attorney, or whether it was Dan Livingston or TJ Lewis, the two cops that spearheaded this case, they knew all the stuff that I had been involved in. So my thinking was, based on everything that I had done, everything that I had gotten away with over the years, are they gonna think that 10 years is enough? In my mind, I didn't think so. I mean, because even though I had to sell my soul to the devil and I had to do all the things that I had to do in order to get to where I was at, I just thought that they were still gonna look at me as, you know what, this guy's he's a bad guy. Whether it was the stuff that he was personally involved in, or whether it was during the time he was a leader and he directed other people to, get involved in criminal activity. I thought that was gonna work against me. Anyways, I remember the days leading up to sentencing. I had done pretty much everything that I thought I could do in order to give myself a better chance at sentencing. I got a couple of letters from the few relatives that I had left out there, character letters. I had, letters of support and stuff like that. And then I got my GED and I knocked down the programs that they offered in the county jail. So I had done everything that I could to give myself the best chance at sentencing. So boom, the day comes for me to go to sentencing. And I remember that same day, there was another one of my co-defendants that went for sentencing, and we were both supposed to get sentenced on that same day. And what ended up happening is he went in first. Now, as far as his situation, he was looking at, I want to say he was looking at 10 or 15 years, something like that. He was looking at a little bit of time. I don't remember how much time he was looking at it, but it was somewhere around 15 to 20 years. So anyways, his lawyer comes in and he basically goes over all the sentencing guidelines and everything that was going to happen. And I knew he was going to get out that day. He pretty much had anticipated getting out as well. His lawyer told him he thought there was a good chance. But then, there was always that possibility that the judge or the district attorney could have switched up in the process. And then there were so many 186.22s involved and priors and all that stuff that, there was also the possibility that you find out that you don't have enough credit to get, credited out. So he was stressed out a little bit, but like I said, I knew he was getting out that day. Anyways, he goes in there and he'd been down probably around, I want to say, he'd been in the county jail for a good maybe 6 years, something like that. And 6 years isn't 10 years, but 6 years is still a long time. Anyways, he goes in for sentencing and comes back in around 15 minutes later, and he's like, "B, man, I'm out, bro." He's like, they credited me out. He's like, the judge was hella cool. The DA didn't balk at nothing, and my lawyer went in there and put it down, and the judge pretty much just agreed with everything that was recommended. And I was righteously happy for that guy, and I still am. He's still out in the streets right now. He's probably one of the few that have made something out of everything that he had to go through. In other words, he didn't just use that opportunity to get back out and to get back involved in the same stuff that he was involved in before. He turned his life in another direction. He got a job. He ended up having a couple of kids, and he's still out. He never went back, and he's a lot younger than me. So, I was worried about him. I was worried about him because him being younger, it's still being in his blood. I just thought that there was a possibility he was going to end up coming back. But, the other thing is, it was good for me to see him get cut loose. In some ways, it was a good sign for me because, even though our situations were different, everybody's different, and, there's different factors that you're sensed on. Just the fact that he was cut loose showed me that, what, maybe there's a possibility that you're going to catch that same train. I don't know. That's how I was looking at it. But unfortunately, when I went to court that day, they postponed my sentencing for about a week. I don't remember what it was. My lawyer had to do something, or the district attorney had to tweak something, but they weren't ready to move forward on that day. So I had to go back for another week. And it was stressful. Sentencing was one of the biggest days for me in that process. So I had to go back to my cell and continue to slug it out for another week and wonder if I was going to be getting out next week. So anyway, boom, fast forward, another week goes by, and now it's my turn. I went to sentencing by myself this time. There were a lot of us that were getting sentenced around the same time, but when I went the second time, I was scheduled to go by myself. So anyways, I remember being in the court holding tank and just pacing, and my mind was all over the place. I probably shouldn't have drunk coffee that morning because my mind was already spinning, thinking about, the what ifs, and, if things don't go right, what's going to happen, and if things go bad, or if things do go good, whether I got out or whether I didn't get out. Either way, it was going to be a stressful thing for me to deal with. It was a huge undertaking. I'd been in the county jail for 10 years, so getting back out, it was going to be a somewhat of a shock to me. Just like every other time that I had paroled in the past from Pelican Bay, having spent years back there in the SHU, getting back out, reacclimating, trying to readapt, being around regular people again. I was going to have to go through all that. Plus, life was going to be different for me. I wasn't going to be involved in a lot of the things that I was involved in before. The criminal element, the fellas, that whole lifestyle, I was no longer going to be a part of that. And then, I had to accept the reality that there's a lot that I lost. My mom had passed away, Vicky passed away, my grandmother passed away, and this was all that I had out there, and all that was gone. It was completely wiped out. So, on one front, it was a blessing, that it would be a blessing if I got out, but then it was almost like I had nobody to go to. All my family was gone. All my loved ones were gone. I would have to start all over, or I would have to find those connections somewhere else, because the ones that I had, I didn't have no more. And it felt like a huge void that I was carrying around with me. So anyways, whether you guys believe me or not, I honestly did not believe that I was going to get out that day. I know there's a lot of people that have an opinion and might say, yeah, you did, you knew you were going to get out. I honestly didn't. You can believe me, or you can take it for what it's worth, but I did not believe that I was going to get out that day. And like I said, the way I looked at it was that people knew about my past history. They knew everything that I was involved in the past. And that was going to work against me on one front. They would take all that into consideration when, it was time for them to decide whether or not I deserved to be back out. Even the judge, I didn't know what that judge was going to do. He had cut several people loose already that had went to sentencing before me, but my situation was completely different. You guys got to remember, I was the main target in these investigations. So they might have looked at these guys as, these guys are mudsuckers, or these are the bottom feeders. These are the little players, the guys that were just taking direction from guys like Boxer. But, Boxer was one of the catalysts. He was one of the leaders. So he's responsible for a lot of the stuff that all these other guys were involved in as well. So that's how I was looking at it. I was looking at it and seeing it for what it really was. Anyways, I go into court. It's time. The bailiff comes and he calls. And again, I was turned up that day. My mind was all over the place. I remember walking into the courtroom, and it's like, everything just got louder, and the lights got brighter, and my sense of awareness was peaking. And I was completely tuned in to that courtroom. So I walk in, I post up next to my attorney, and, they start going through the formalities. The judge starts reading off the sentencing guidelines and all the legal mumbo jumbo, the stuff that's irrelevant, before he gets down to the meat and potatoes. So they start talking about the 5-year priors, the 3 strikes. And at that time, when all this was going on, the 3 strikes law was actually modified. They had modified it. And even though it really didn't change the guidelines as far as my situation per se, it did give the judge a lot more discretion insofar as how he chose to sentence me. So as we're going through this process, story of my life, nothing in my life is ever simple. There's always something ends up going wrong, or something gets thrown in the mix where it just nothing can ever go smooth for me. My luck is bad. When I have bad luck, it's real bad. When I have good luck, I have real good luck. And this hearing was no different. So when it came to my numbers and it came to the felonies that my attorney and the district attorney had agreed that I would plead guilty to, there ended up being some kind of issue on one of my 5-year prison priors. And this is something that came up right there at the last minute. If the district attorney didn't agree to drop that 5-year prior, this is something that they obviously overlooked. If he didn't agree to drop that 5-year prior, I was going to end up going to prison for another 5 years. Or he could drop that 5 years and I would be credited up. At that point during the hearing, they had pretty much established that. Now, they obviously had talked or they brought me into sense, because it became obvious that the judge, the district attorney, and my lawyer had talked and had pretty much agreed that I would get credited out that day. But this 5-year prior was going to hold me back. So when they started doing the numbers, I think the clerk caught it and she mentioned it to the judge. And the way that the way he kind of he was flipping it was like, hey, you need to drop this 5-year prior in order enough credit so that he can get out today. And when he communicated that to the district attorney, that's probably the first time where I felt like, you know what, I'm gonna be getting out today. That was the first sign, the positive sign that I got. Because again, I didn't believe that I was gonna get credited out. I thought I was gonna have to go away for a little bit more time. So the district attorney, he's going through his paperwork and he's calculating something, and he's talking with another district attorney, his supervisor, and they're going over the numbers. And after they get through talking about everything, at the end of the day, he agrees to drop the 5-year prior on top of everything else that they had already conceded to. It was a win-win for me. So after the judge went over all the guidelines and then went over all the felonies that I pled to and went through that whole process, he addressed me specifically. And he's like, you know what? He's like, there's no doubt in my mind that you've been involved in criminal activities since the time you were a youngster, from the time I was a teenager, and that this was the life that I led. But he said that he understood that I didn't have a chance from a young age. I got addicted to drugs when I was 12. My family was addicted to drugs. And basically, this was just the life that was presented to me. But that as years went on, that I would continue to get involved in criminal activity. And, it brought us to where we were that day. But then he said, you had to make some tough choices. And I know how tough those choices were for you. Everybody that was involved in these cases, they all seen it. But then he said, but you ended up being one of the lucky ones, because at some point, no matter what it was, whether it was politics, whether it was betrayal, whatever it was, a light went on and you woke up and seen things for what they were. And you made choices. You made choices that brought you to where you are today. And I know how tough it was for you to make those choices. Everybody that was a part of this process, everybody that was a part of this process and seeing these everybody that was a part of this process and seeing, these cases play out, they seen it as well. You didn't just walk the walk. You didn't just talk. You didn't just walk the walk, but you also talked the talk. You did everything that was expected of you. You put yourself in the best position possible to possibly get back out one day. And I honestly believe that you're going to take your life and you're going to turn it in another direction. I don't think that you're going to end up back in a courtroom again. I don't think you're going to get back involved in criminal activity. I honestly believe that this whole process that you went through, and I'm not talking about being in the county jail, looking at life in prison. I'm talking about you having to cut ties with the people that you've been involved with for the last 20 something years. That right there, I think, is what's going to make the difference. And in some ways, he was right. Much knew myself that there's no way I would allow myself to get caught up again behind some stupidity. The only way that I will ever get in trouble again is if somebody tries to put their hands on me or tries to put their hands on my loved. I'm talking about robbing somebody or slinging dope or something like that. Anyways, at that point during the process, even though the judge was addressing me and still kind of going over the sentencing guidelines, my mind had drifted off at that point. At that point, I knew I was getting out that day, and all I could think about was just everything on the streets. What was I gonna do now? And it might sound crazy to you guys, but instead of me being happy and turned up, knowing that now I'm gonna be out some point during that day, I'm gonna be back out on the streets free again. I'm gonna be giving my freedom back. All these things that I thought I would never be around again, women, cars, the luxuries and freedoms that we all have that we take for granted. All those things would be given back to me at some point during that day. I'm not saying that there was a part of me that wasn't happy, but what I was feeling more than anything was an overwhelming sense of anxiety. I was kind of stressed out. I'm thinking, you know what? Okay, I'm going to be getting out, but what am I going to do? Who am I going to go see? Where am I going to go? And then how is it going to be? I had thought about a lot of this stuff, over the months and over the years when I be in my cell and I just be thinking about the streets. But I was here now. So this was a major thing for me. This was a big part of the transition. I didn't know how it was gonna go. So that's what I was feeling. So towards the end of the sentencing hearing, the judge sentenced me to 16 years, 4 months. That put me out. I had been in the county jail almost 10 years, so I had enough credit to credit me out. The judge wished me good luck, expressed some sentiments. I didn't really say nothing. I kind of nodded my head at him, and that was pretty much it. So anyways, after when the hearing was officially over, I was escorted back to the court tank. So I get back to the court tank, and I remember just sitting down, and I'm by myself now. This is when I really started to feel the anxiety. I felt like, I don't know how to explain it to you guys, but I've said this before, and I know it sounds crazy, but before in the past, whenever I would parole from like Pelican Bay, and I was down for a couple of years, and then I was getting ready to get out, because of the psychological effects that Pelican Bay had on me, there was a side of me that actually wanted to go back to myself. I didn't really appreciate freedom for what it was. I just looked at it as like, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to act. I just want to go back to my cell and be left alone. That sounds crazy, but that's really the kind of effect that those places have on you. And in retrospect, I look back on that, and that's crazy. I just wanted to go back to my cell. I wanted to be locked back up because that was my safe place. That was my safe place. That's what I had come to know for years. Eventually I would go through the transitions, I would get out, and I would be okay. But I was feeling that when I was in that court tank. I was just sitting there thinking, like, I wasn't happy. Maybe it was because of the losses that I endured, but whatever it was, I was sitting there, and I was trying to figure all this out, what I was gonna do, where I was gonna go. And it was a lot different than I thought it would be. I thought me getting sentenced and the possibility of me getting back out, me getting cut loose, it would be a good day for me, and I would be happy and turned up, but it wasn't like that. I felt not the complete opposite, but it wasn't like that. I'm not saying that I wasn't happy on some level, but it just wasn't like I thought it was going to be. Anyways, the bailiff ends up coming in, the court bailiff, and he obviously knew I was getting ready to go in there for sentencing. He talked to me before I went in. He was like, "Hey man, I know you've been down a long time, 10 years." Everybody in that jail knew me. So, when he came back, he was like, "Hey, congrats, man." He's like, "Good luck to you." He's like, "How you feeling, man?" And, I kind of played that role like I was happy. I was like, "Oh man, it's a long time coming." I can't wait to get back out there. What's the first thing you're gonna eat, man? I couldn't even tell him. I was like, man, there's so many things I want, I don't even know. My mind was just in a different place. From that point, he escorts me back up to 6A. I get back to 6A, and we were locked down that day. So when I got back up to 6A, you know, the floor officer, he knew I was getting sentenced. Everybody in that jail knew that I was going for sentencing that day. I know it sounds crazy, but that's real. Anybody that was there with me, I'm sure if you guys are watching, you know that that's true. So I tell him before I go back to the cell, I'm like, yeah, man, you know, they credited me out. So at some point today, I'm out of here, man. You know, and he was like, damn, man, what are you gonna do? And where are you gonna go? And who are you gonna see? And what you gonna eat and all that good stuff. I just wanted to get back to myself. So, you know, I ended up shaking that conversation. I walked back to the cell and I sat down. So even though I wasn't technically still active, so to speak, old habits are hard to break. You know, I still used to roll my mattress up, still used to fold up all my blankets. My cell was always organized. I kept everything clean. Anyways, I get back in the cell and I take my top off. I sit down on my little seat and I just start thinking about the streets. I start thinking about everything. I start trying to formulate some kind of plan, what I'm going to do, how's it going to be, trying to mentally prepare myself to get back out there. And, you know, before I come to the end of this episode, I know you guys probably want me to keep going and going and going, especially because it's been so long since I did an Inner Demons. I'm probably going to milk these last couple out, man, because getting back out to the streets, it's a big part of this story. It's a big part of Inner Demons. I know a lot of you watch these videos because in some ways they help you guys. For some, they use them as kind of like a blueprint to help them get through some of their struggles or the things that they're going through or whatever it is. So this is the other thing. When I was in 6A, program was split up. Like I think the top tier came out and then the bottom tier came out. I think they were split up like that in two separate programs. And there was a lot of cats in there that I never even spoke to. I never really talked to them because just when I would come out, I would get on the phone, and that's pretty much all I used to do when I was out of my cell. I would spend all my time on the phone. So there was a lot of cats in there that, unless they came to my door, I never even spoke to them. So there was probably around 7 or 8 dudes in that whole dorm that I used to talk to. So anyways, I want to say it was probably about maybe 2 hours after I got back to the cell. All of a sudden, I hear the lock on my door pop open and I hear the floor officer. He yells over, he said, hey, boxer. He's like, pack your property. You're going home. And I bullshit you guys not. That whole dorm started clapping. You know, me personally, I kind of thought it was weird, but you know, on the other hand, it was cool. So by the time they called me, I'd already packed my stuff up. I didn't have that much stuff. Prior to me going to sentencing, I had downsized my property. A lot of stuff I threw away, other stuff I gave away just in case I was going to get out that day. So I didn't have a lot to pack, but I was already ready. So I think I had like a box or something. I had like 5 or 6 manila envelopes with all my pictures and some other stuff that I was taking with me. I swooped all that up and I walked out, brought my mattress and stuff. And when I walked out into the pod, again, these fools started banging on their doors. They were clapping, whistling. And again, you know, I'm not trying to be a bad sport, but it was kind of weird for me. You know, I kind of looked around and nodded my head in appreciation, and I went about my way. An officer from downstairs had come up. He was posted up by the elevators. So the floor officer was like, hey man, good luck to you. I hope I don't see you again, man. Keep your head up. And I walked out. I put my mattress where the mattress was at, threw my laundry in a cart, and I walked to the elevator and boom, I was on my way. This is probably a good place to stop this right here because what happens next would be it's a good place to start in the next episode. But anyways, before I close this up, there's something that I want to say. There's been an overwhelming number of you in the comments that have expressed you wanting to see me go back to the old format. In other words, you guys would rather have me speak like I'm speaking right now when I'm telling the stories, the Mexican Mafia stories or the other stories that I get into. You guys say that you would rather see me speak on camera than to type everything out and just put the audio out. So that's what I'm gonna do. You guys have a lot of influence as far as how I run this channel. This is your guys' channel. If you guys would rather have me do something a different way, or you guys, float an idea and I think it's beneficial for the channel, I'm all for it. So because there's been a lot of you that have been requesting for me to go back to the old way, that's what I'm gonna do. For me, I can do it either way. I can put these stories in context and then bang them out the way that I've been doing them, or I can do them the way that I do Inner Demons, like this right here. So that's what I'm gonna do. You guys have spoken, so from this point on, I'm gonna start going back to the old way. Anyway, I just wanted to put that out there to you guys, especially since there's been so many of you that have been commenting on that. This last week, there was like comment after comment after comment. After reading that many comments, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to flip it back to the old way. So we'll see how it goes. Anyways, the other thing that you guys have been expressing is more content. I know you guys want more content, and I take that as a compliment, because anytime you're asking somebody for more content, it's obviously because you like their content, you like their stories, and I appreciate that. But what I do want to say is that I'm going to try different ways to try to pump more content out. And I'm not just saying that, I'm not just throwing that out there to keep you guys pacified. I'm really trying to find different ways to cut the time down in the process that I've been using to get these videos out. I do the editing, the cropping the pictures, finding the pictures, putting the background music in. There's just a lot of different things that I do during the process that are time consuming. But obviously it's taking me too long to put these videos out. This is not a high volume channel. I'll try to bring it up a little bit, but you guys just bear with me. Maybe going back to the old way is the answer. That might be the solution. We'll see. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of Inner Demons. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, give it a thumbs down. But either way, drop a comment and let me know what you think. Getting to episode 100 was obviously a landmark in this series, and it wasn't by design. I didn't say, you know what, I'm going to wait to talk about me getting sentenced and me hitting the streets when I get to episode 100. It just kind of worked that way. But for those of you that have been supportive, those of you that have given Inner Demons a lot of praise, I appreciate you guys. And I'm glad that in some way, shape, or form that they managed to help some of you in other ways just beyond entertainment. With that being said, I'll probably run a live tomorrow night. You guys will probably get this video after that live. With that being said, I'm going to go ahead and cut this one short. I might do a live tomorrow night. It's just going to depend on how long it's going to take for me to edit and get this video out tomorrow. There's a good chance you guys might end up getting this video after I do that live. But either way, on that note, you guys continue to tap in, continue being positive. With that being said, this is your boy B, and I'm gone.